Hi, I'm Bookstrovert Reviews, and today I'm interviewing best-selling author Tom Phillips for my new Author Interviews, the Author Interrogations. Tom Phillips is the author of the fabulous middle grade series, The Curious League of Detectives and Thieves. Thank you for coming, Tom.
Thank you for having me, Bookstrovert.
Okay, let's start off with our first question.
Sure.
What's one fun fact about yourself that readers would be surprised to learn?
I've never drank a cup of coffee.
Really?
Yeah. Well, that's sort of a lie. I have tasted coffee, but I've never I do not drink coffee.
And why is that?
Uh,
Oh,
because it tastes like dirt. I don't
I
know. I don't know.
agree.
I just don't. I just never got into coffee. I missed that cool thing to do when you were in college or elementary school or whenever people start drinking coffee. I've just always been a tea drinker, so I was a tea drinker all the way through my life.
What is some advice you have for beginning writers?
Uh, don't edit, just write. Like if you have a story, right? Just sit down and write it from beginning to end. Don't go back, don't work on it, don't try to perfect your story because it's easier to edit a blank page. So, but if you try to make it the best because you read somebody's book and you're like, "Oh, I want to be just like them and I want to write like them," and that's great, but if you keep editing your first chapter, you'll never actually write a book. And if you write the whole book, you can always go back and change things, but you have to get to the end to be able to know whether you can change things or not.
That makes a
Also,
lot of sense.
yeah, also read a lot, read all your favorite authors, and then once you read a book and you love it, then go back through and take notes of why you love it, like what things surprised you and what things made you angry and what things, sparked emotion, and that'll help you learn how to write because you'll be like, why? You know, why did it make me feel this way? What were the words? What was going on? How was it written that made me feel scared or happy or sad?
What was the first spark that led to the idea for the Curious League?
Um, how do I so I read the series of unfortunate events and I love them and I've always wanted to write something like that. And I was in a museum and this in New York City, I was in the Museum of Natural History in New York City. And this woman was in front of me in line at the museum, and her um, son was in front of me, and he said, "I would love to live here, Mom." She said, "This is pretty cool, huh?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, I wish I could live here." And she said, "Well, where would you live?" And he said, "In the ceiling." Uh, and then she said, "Well, why would you live in the ceiling?" He said, "Because, Mom, you can't live in a museum. You would get caught." So that started the whole thing. Like, what if it was a thief that lived in the ceiling of the museum? And then it became what if the detective lived in the ceiling of the museum? And that's where we're at.
And then how did you decide that the detective would be, um, the kid would be the detective
I
instead of
act
the
I actually didn't. I my first draft, to talk about first drafts, my first draft of the book, John R. Borhaug was a 67-year-old man who worked at the museum. He was a
Really?
he was a curator. Oh, he was the curator of the museum, and his ruby got stolen. And this insane detective shows up to help solve the case, the Inspector Todius McGee. And Todius was the main character, and John was the sidekick.
Wow.
Um, I went to work for Reading Rainbow, and a man named Mike Matola read the book. And Mike said, "This is a good book, but it could be a great book if you actually leaned into the mid grade."
Yeah.
And he said your protagonist has to be a kid. So I went home and I originally was thinking about making Todius the kid. This kid detective shows up and he's like, "I'm a detective," and they're like, "You're a kid," and he's like, "I'm also a good detective." And then they go through, and my wife was like, "What if you made what if you made John Borhaug the kid, and he has to team up with the detective and clear his name?" And that's
Mm.
where that all came from.
I mean, I guess that kind of leads into my next question. Why'd you choose to write a specifically middle grade book? But that kind of answers that.
That and I read middle grade, like
Yeah.
it's sort of. I like kid stuff because I like the whimsical world and the nuttiness of like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory
Yeah.
and Paddington Bear and things like that. So I decided I really am drawn towards that. And because I don't have any children of my own, I don't want to do YA because I feel like it's so complex to catch the real emotions of a child, where I get a little more leadway with mid-grade because I can have flying ships and talking monkeys and things and nobody really questions it. And it's sort of universal. I think that like kids these days go through a whole lot. But when it comes to kids, there's a lot of development things, so you have a better shot at like trying to figure it out.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Speaking of first drafts, would you say you are a plotter or a pantser when you write?
I'm a plotter. I'm a plotter. I'm a plotter. I'm a plotter. And those are weird. Uh, as Lily Tomlin said, if you pray, you're what is it? If you talk to God, it's called praying. If God talks to you, it's called schizophrenia. That's how I feel about pantsers. I'm like, how like my characters talk to me, and I'm like, you need to see a psychiatrist. Uh, but no, I'm a plotter. I'm really, in all honesty, I'm a plotter because mysteries, you have to put all the clues down. It's very, very specific, right? So it's really hard to just sit down and write a mystery because you have to like put all the clues and do things. And even pantsers that write mysteries from beginning to end then go back through and have to like do a whole lot of work to fit things and do a lot of re writing. And I don't want to do rewriting, so I try to plot it all out so I don't have to.
I completely agree with that. I'm a plotter too. Um, what besides your own is your favorite middle grade book?
Um, oh my
Or
God.
top five?
Okay, well, there's so many. I mean, the series of unfortunate events are my top 13. No, there you go. Yeah, The Winterton Deception by Janet
I
Sumner
love that.
Townsend.
I just read it. It's so
So
good.
so good. It's so good that I'm jealous. That's like that of modern books, of books that just came out. That's my favorite. My favorite book of all time is The Three Investigators' second book. It's called The Case of the Stuttering Parrot.
Never heard of that.
Yeah, The Three Investigators was like a Hardy Boys type of book. Came out in the 50s
I
to
read more
60s.
the Nancy Drew type stuff.
Yeah, it's like Nancy Drew. So when Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys were really big, they started to do other ones, and one of them was called The Three Investigators, and it's three boys that team up together, and the lead kid is named Jupiter Jones, and I love that name.
A good name.
They're great. They're great. They stand up today too. I mean, like if you read them, you're like, oh, these are cool. These are fun.
How
They are
long are they? Are they like thick
they're
book?
like Hardy Boys. They're like Nancy Drew. Yeah.
I should read that. I would very much.
The very first mystery that I ever read was that book, and I still own the book because I stole it. And yeah, I can say that now because I'm 43, and I don't think the elementary school I stole it from even exists anymore, so they can't come after me. And if they do, man, is that fee gonna be a lot. I do not advocate stealing books. I was just a kid that was very disorganized, and one day, I think it was like in high school, we were cleaning out boxes in a thing. It was there, and I was like, well, it's too late now. It's fine. So, but no, you shouldn't steal books because other people get to read them, and libraries are amazing.
I love the library. I always get excited whenever we get to go. I get all bouncy.
That's cool.
Who is your personal favorite character from your own book?
Oh man, put me on the spot there. That's rough. I think the Great Gotini is probably one of my favorite character.
I like him too.
Uh, I sort of have different favorite characters of different books. So like the Great Gotini in the first book is awesome. He's hilarious to me.
Yeah,
And then the second book, I think I really love Connor Ray,
yeah.
and Wembley. But then a
Yeah.
great company. And then in my third book, I sort of think Wembley and Shim Sham sort of
I
take
love Shim Sham.
that because the third book is really about um, uh, going on an adventure with your found family, right? So the first book is finding the family. The third book is finding his friends, John's friends, like making friends. And the third book is then how do you negotiate and how do you have friends? How do you have friendships? Like what happens when things are bad and good and different? So it's really about not just making friends, but keeping them, I guess.
Yeah. Something that I'm always curious about is if the author gets any say in the cover of their book. Did you?
Most authors do not get a lot of say in the cover of their book. They get to see the cover of their book. They might be able to make some suggestions, but we don't have say in our books. My editor, Allison Weiss, really takes my thoughts. She cares about how I feel. So she does take my thoughts into consideration when plotting and planning the cover of the book. So like the first book cover, I actually had drawn my own sketch and sent it to them.
Wow.
I was like, this is what I want it to be. And then they hired Stephen Gilpin, who is the author of my cover, and then he took my chicken scratch and made it into this like amazing cover. The second cover, Allison really wanted to have an action scene. I really wanted to continue on with like the main character and the object that is being stolen, and then all the strange characters around, like a movie poster, you know.
Yeah.
And she said no, and she vetoed it, and then did the pirate thing, which is one of my favorite things. And then the third cover we just saw, yeah, that's one of my favorite covers. I didn't like it, and I didn't really like it when it started, but I love it. I think Stephen Kilpin's amazing.
I have
Um,
it right here, and I love this cover. In my opinion, I like the second book more than the first book. I don't know why, I just do.
like
And
reading the second book, or you like the cover better?
I like reading the second book. I like the cover of both equally.
And then the third book has them on the front of a train, and that's exciting. So it's sort of a
I saw on Instagram.
more adventure, which I really like. It's really fun. Yeah. I really think it's really cool to have an editor that knows what is good, and really has like a really good pulse on that. Because what I would have chosen might not have been as good a cover as came out, because I don't really know. As an author, you find yourself really stuck in one thing, and you get really attached to stuff, but other people might get attached to something else. So that's why the editor's there.
I understand some of the characters in book one are based on people you actually know. Are any of the characters in book two based on old friends?
They are. My so I have to say this, that the characters are named after people that I know. They aren't the personalities or lifestyles of the
That makes
people.
sense.
Like I don't know any terrible magicians but great characters. But yeah, John, and Todius and Gotini and Pickles and all of them are named. The names are from people that I know. Uh the in the second book, I actually use personalities of some of my friends, amalgamations of personalities of some of my friends. So like my adult best friend and my childhood best friend are sort of mixed together to make Wimbley, which is John's best friend. And then I chose the name Wimbley because of my favorite Fraggle. Um, and
Your
then the other
favorite what?
Fraggle from Fraggle Rock.
What is Fraggle Rock?
This interview is over. You have homework to do. Fraggle Rock is a show that was on when I was a kid. About it's like a puppet. Same Jim Henson did it, about these creatures called Fraggles that live under the ground.
Never heard of
You need to look it up, and then
it.
you'll
I
understand.
will look it up right after this.
Um,
Oh, wait, I lost
or presidents. I like to name things after presidents, but that's a different story altogether.
my. I've always wondered, how do you decide who to thank in your acknowledgments?
Oh, okay.
There
Well,
must be so many people.
no, I hate all people, so I just want to thank myself. No, just kidding.
Makes sense.
The first book's acknowledgments, they gave me a very long acknowledgement.
Oh, do they give you like a certain amount of pages you
They
can?
do. I'm going to explain it
Oh,
to you.
wow.
They give you a certain amount of pages because a way a book is printed. So a lot of times once they finish the book and it goes in a typeset, then Allison will say, "Oh, for us to put all these pages together, I need an acknowledgement of 3 pages, or I need an acknowledgement of half a page, or I need an acknowledgement of 6 pages." With the first book, Allison was kind enough to give me a large amount because there were so many people to thank, from the publisher to like my family. And like, it's a long journey to get your first book made, right? There's a lot of people to thank. Second book, I think the people that helped me the most from the first book being published and the second book through that journey. So there's a lot of like other writers, um some of my super fan Amy, like it's my writing. I was part of a writing group at the time, so I thank those, like the people that helped me get through that year. Um my third book acknowledgement is I haven't written it yet because I don't know how many pages it is, but it's probably going to be more about like the librarians or the schools that I've met over the last like 2 years, and a lot about my wife who helped me do everything. So I'm
Of
gonna go,
course.
and some of my found friends and family too. My acknowledgement or my dedication at the beginning of the book is always has to do with somebody that I love that has the theme of the book in it. So the first book is about found um family. Sorry, I get all choked up over it. So I dedicated to my dad, who passed away right before the book came out. And then my second book is dedicated to my sister because she was my first friend. And,
Aw, that's so sweet.
and then the sorry, you just gotta ignore me. I'm a crier. Um the fourth book will be dedicated to my mom. The fourth book is about more really about grandparents than anything. It's about the older generation and the younger generation connecting together to stop things, and how your grandparents still have value, even though
I
they're
will
and
connect to
your
that.
grandkids have value even though they're young and all that. So,
I connect to that very much. I love my grandpa with all my heart. I love his stories and all the like things he has to tell and his opinions and how much he loves my dog. My grandpa adores my dog. Like he's more excited to see him than he is to see us.
I think the fourth book's, well, we haven't really talked about it. Like Allison and I are still working on the plot, but the fourth book is going to be about it's going to have a very big theme about like um how we treat the older generation, and that they were once young and dumb, you know, and now they're no longer young. They were both once young and foolish, and now they're no longer young.
But
But they
still foolish.
absolutely, because you never change an adult, right? So it's like that situation. And John, you know, I can't tell you what it's about because you haven't read
Yeah.
the book, and I can't explain. But once you read the third book and you get to the fourth book, you're like, wow, Tom, you're very, very smart.
Once we get to the fourth book, we'll have to have another interview and then
Yeah,
you
we'll have another interview and then you can go, ah, yes,
yeah.
floating. But
Can you
I
tell
also
us
explain
anything?
why John has to get along with his grandparents, but I won't tell you why. Because, okay, go ahead.
Can you tell us anything about book three? What's it about? Where it takes place? Any secrets you can spill?
Yes, book three. I will say this about book three. It takes place in Peru. The majority of it takes place on a train, the Peruvian Express, hence why it's called the Peruvian Express. And there is definitely a moment somewhere around page 176 where you will probably toss the book across the room and not want to read anymore.
I love those types of books though.
What's that? I don't know why, but that's somewhere around there. Somewhere around the beginning of the third act, the darkest night, if you will, where you definitely are like, I had both, but the people have read it so far have been very angry at me, but you got to do what you got to do.
I love those types of books though because that's when you pick it all up, when you pick it back up again and then you start reading again and everything makes sense and it just feels so like satisfying and good and you're like, "Oh, that was well worth it."
Well, I always go into the book being that it's the last one in the series. So if it were the last one of the series, those things had to happen. Sorry.
Okay, and thank you. Lastly, what is one question no one asked you that you would like to be asked?
Um, I have no idea. The question nobody asked me that I would like to be asked. Um, I could tell you the most common questions that people do ask. Does that
Sure.
help? Okay. Well, the most common question I get from kids are, why did you write this book? How many books have you written? And can I be named in your book?
And what are your answers?
Uh, how long did it take to write this? The first book was around 5 years to get it perfect and get it sold and everything. The second book was in 6 months, or the second book was in a year, and the third book was about 5 months. But
That's
only
so like
I
different
rewrote the
spans of
third book.
time.
Yeah. Well, because once you have a deadline, then you can't just like dilly dally. Like if
Yeah.
you publishing, if like the publisher, you haven't gotten a publisher yet, you can rewrite your book like 100 times, right? Nobody cares. But once you're in publishing and they're like, hey, you have a date at this day for the next year, then all of a sudden you have to actually sit down and produce something, and that's crazy. Nobody prepared me for that. And then the answer to have the kid's name in their book is probably not, but maybe it will be. I don't know.
Could be a coincidence.
Could be, could not. I don't know. Um, but yeah, I think that the thing I learned the most about the publishing world is that there's room on the shelf for everyone. So if you like send your book out and the agent doesn't want it and you feel rejected and you feel stupid and you feel like you're never going to make it, that's ridiculous. It's just not the right agent. There is one out there. And for instance, when I wrote my book and I got my agent, Ann Rose, who is the best agent in the world, um, Pixel and Ink, the publishing company that published my book, didn't exist.
Really?
So for me to go, oh, I don't know if my book will ever get published. Yeah, I mean, something could pop up tomorrow. A new agent could come in. Some assistant agent or assistant editor is now in it got promoted to acquiring editor, and your book's the perfect one. So they don't ever think that it's that rejection is. But I will say that if you get a lot of rejection letters and they all say the same thing, like the beginning was slow or I didn't quite get into it or whatever, pay attention to those clues because it could be writing. And if you work on your craft, um, you will get published. It's you can get anybody can get published. And also if I can do it, anybody can because I'm an idiot. So
You're
yeah,
a genius, Tom.
I wish, but I'm not.
I mean, you've written 2 books. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, well,
Published books.
technically I've written three, but yeah, no, I just kidding. I published two books. The third one I turned in the third book to go to typeset. What is today? Tuesday, yesterday. Allison and I finished it yesterday, so it just went into typeset,
Wow.
which is pretty stellar.
Woohoo.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm proud of that.
so those are all of our questions. Thank you, Tom, so much for being on the very first author interrogation.
No problem. Thank you for I want my lawyer now. Oh wait, I first supposed to ask for a lawyer at the beginning. Oh, no, too late.
Okay, and then you can follow me on Bookstrovert Reviews on Instagram and Goodreads, and Bookstrovert Rev on X, formerly known as Twitter.